All right, so you're thinking about retirement and you're exploring gold IRAs, smart move. Let's dive into this and see if it's right for you.
It's fascinating how gold has held value over centuries. We'll look at how that plays into a modern retirement portfolio. What's really important is understanding the why behind this strategy.
Okay, so this article we have here really digs into gold IRAs, and it starts by talking about how retirement planning's kind of shifted, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about aggressive growth anymore.
Exactly. You've spent your career building wealth, but now it's about protecting that wealth, right? And generating income to support your lifestyle for potentially decades.
Yeah, for a long time.
It's a whole different ballgame.
So where does a gold IRA fit into all of this? This article lays out the basics. Help me unpack this.
Sure, a gold IRA is a self-directed IRA that holds physical gold, like bullion or coins, instead of the typical stocks and bonds you see in a traditional IRA. You work with a custodian to set it up, choose your gold, and it's stored securely. It's really like creating a tangible safety net for your future.
Interesting. So it's not about replacing your entire portfolio with gold. It's more about adding this other layer of security.
Right. And one of the key reasons people consider gold, especially for retirement, is its historical performance during inflation. The article mentions a 65-year-old retiree named Barbara, whose purchasing power was being eroded by rising prices. She used a gold IRA to counter that, and it really highlights a key point.
That gold can act as a buffer against inflation. We hear that a lot, but I'm curious, what's the mechanism there? Why does gold tend to hold its value when everything else seems to be getting more expensive?
It's tied to gold's intrinsic value and limited supply. Unlike paper currency, which can be printed endlessly, gold is a finite resource. When governments print more money, the value of that currency can go down, but gold tends to hold steady. It's like a fixed point in a sea of fluctuating values.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're concerned about inflation eating away at your savings, adding gold to your retirement plan could be a way to hedge against that.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about gold as an inflation hedge, but there's another key reason people turn to gold IRAs: diversification.
Right. Not putting all your eggs in one basket. This article even uses the example of John and Susan, who wanted to diversify away from the stock market as they approached retirement. They allocated a portion of their savings into a gold IRA, and it provided a level of stability when the market fluctuated. But is there a magic percentage? I mean, how much of my portfolio should be gold to really see that diversification benefit?
There's no one-size-fits-all answer, unfortunately. It depends on your risk tolerance, your time horizon, and your overall financial goals. Some experts suggest allocating 5–10% to gold, while others recommend as much as 20%. A qualified financial advisor can help you determine the right allocation for your situation.
So it's not just about adding gold for the sake of it. It's about strategically incorporating it into your portfolio based on your individual needs. That brings up a question I had. This article touches on the fact that gold IRAs have tax advantages, but it doesn't really explain them. Can you clarify that a bit?
Yeah. Sure. Gold IRAs have the same tax advantages as traditional IRAs. Your investments grow tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on the gains until you withdraw the money in retirement. There's also the Roth Gold IRA, where your contributions are made after taxes, but your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free.
So it's like choosing between paying taxes now or later, depending on what makes sense for your situation.
Exactly. But it's important to note that, like any IRA, there are rules and regulations around withdrawals and penalties for early withdrawal. It's crucial to understand those before making any decisions. Now, the article also cautions against scams and pitfalls associated with gold IRAs. It's important we touch on this.
Yes, definitely. It seems like whenever something gains popularity, the scammers come out of the woodwork. What red flags should we be watching for?
Absolutely. Always verify that the custodian you choose for your gold IRA is IRS approved. This is essential to ensure your investment is protected. Be wary of companies selling gold at inflated prices or pushing you to make quick decisions.
So do your research and ask questions. If something feels too good to be true, it probably is.
Precisely. Choosing the right provider is critical. You want a company with a solid reputation, transparent fees, and excellent customer support. This is a long-term investment, so you need a provider you can trust. And remember, it's your retirement we're talking about. You've worked hard for your money, so make sure you're partnering with someone who has your best interests at heart.
Great advice. It sounds like finding a trustworthy and knowledgeable provider is essential. What else should our listeners keep in mind as they explore gold IRAs?
One thing I always emphasize is that gold is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's about stability and long-term risk management. It's a part of your portfolio, not the entire thing.
Like that steady friend who's always there, not the flashy one who disappears when things get tough.
Exactly. Gold can be a valuable tool in a diversified retirement plan, but it's essential to approach it strategically and with a clear understanding of both its potential benefits and limitations. Don't let the allure of gold cloud your judgment. Remember, this is about securing your financial future, not chasing short-term gains.
That's such a great point. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about the basics of gold IRAs, their potential benefits for retirement planning, and the importance of choosing the right provider and avoiding scams. There's definitely a lot to consider.
There is. But the key is to approach this with a level head and a focus on your individual needs and goals. Gold can be a valuable asset, but it's not a magic bullet. It's about fitting the right pieces together to create a retirement plan that gives you peace of mind.
And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some more nuances of gold IRAs and discuss some broader trends in the precious metals market. Stay tuned for part 2.
Welcome back. Before we move on, I want to pick up on something we touched on earlier. The due diligence involved in choosing a gold IRA provider. It really is crucial to get this right.
You're absolutely right. There are so many providers out there. It can feel overwhelming.
That's why it's essential to have a clear checklist when evaluating them. Remember, this is about your financial security, so don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Okay, so let's talk about that checklist. What are some key things our listeners should be looking for?
Reputation is paramount. Look for a provider with a proven track record, positive reviews from reputable sources, and a history of transparency. Don't just rely on what their website says, dig deeper.
So check independent review sites, maybe industry publications. Talk to a financial advisor if you have one.
Exactly. And don't forget about fees. This is where it can get tricky. Make sure you understand all the costs involved up front: custodian fees, storage fees, transaction fees, any administrative expenses. A reputable provider will be completely transparent about their fee structure.
Transparency is key. We don't want any hidden surprises down the line. And what about customer support? That seems crucial, especially for something as complex as a gold IRA.
You're spot on. You want a provider that's responsive, knowledgeable, and willing to answer your questions clearly and patiently. Think of it as a long-term partnership. You'll need ongoing support as you manage your gold IRA. So choose a company that makes you feel confident and well-informed.
It's almost like having a personal gold concierge, someone who can guide you through the process and answer any questions you have.
That's a great way to put it. Now let's talk about the types of gold you can actually invest in through a gold IRA. The IRS has specific standards.
Oh, that's right. It's not just any gold that qualifies.
Correct. It generally has to be investment-grade gold bullion or coins that meet certain purity and fineness requirements. The article gives examples like American Gold Eagles and Canadian Maple Leafs. Those are classic examples of IRA-eligible coins.
The iconic gold coins we see in the movies.
Yeah.
So if I want to hold those in my IRA, I need to make sure they meet those IRS standards.
Exactly. And your gold IRA provider should be able to guide you on the specific options available. They should be experts in this area. Now let's move on to another critical aspect: storage.
Right. We can't just stash our gold bars under the mattress.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
The IRS mandates that gold held in a gold IRA must be stored in an IRS-approved depository. These facilities are designed with the highest level of security to protect your assets from theft, damage, or any other risks.
So it's like a Fort Knox for our retirement gold.
That's a pretty good analogy. These depositories have state-of-the-art security systems, multiple layers of protection, and often insurance coverage as well. They're audited regularly to ensure they meet all IRS regulations.
That's reassuring. Knowing our gold is safe and sound allows us to focus on the bigger picture of retirement planning.
Absolutely. And speaking of the bigger picture, let's circle back to those fundamental reasons why someone might consider a gold IRA in the first place. The article really emphasizes two primary benefits: hedging against inflation and diversifying one's portfolio.
And we've touched on both of those, but let's dig a little deeper, especially regarding inflation. It's a hot topic these days, and I think a lot of people are concerned about how it will impact their retirement savings.
You're absolutely right. We're seeing inflation surging globally, and there's a real fear that it could persist for some time. Having a portion of your retirement savings in an asset that has historically performed well during inflationary periods like gold can provide some peace of mind.
It's almost like an insurance policy against the uncertainty of the future.
That's a good way to think about it. Now, on the diversification front, gold often moves independently of stocks and bonds. This means that when those markets are volatile, gold can provide stability, reducing the overall risk in your portfolio.
It's like that trusty friend who's always there for you no matter what the stock market is doing.
I like that analogy. And as the article pointed out, people like John and Susan benefited from this diversification strategy during market downturns. Their gold IRA helped them weather the storm without having to drastically change their lifestyle.
So it's a powerful illustration of how gold can play a defensive role in a well-rounded retirement plan.
Absolutely. It's not about timing the market or trying to get rich quick. It's about building a solid foundation that can withstand economic ups and downs.
It's about long-term security and peace of mind, which is what retirement should be all about. Now, I have a question. Is a gold IRA a set-it-and-forget-it's kind of investment? Once you've got the gold in there, can you just leave it alone?
That's a common misconception. While gold is a relatively low-maintenance asset compared to, say, actively managing a stock portfolio, it's still important to monitor your gold IRA periodically and potentially make adjustments as needed.
Okay, so what kind of adjustments might be necessary?
Well, as your retirement goals evolve, you might decide to rebalance your portfolio. Maybe you want to increase or decrease your allocation to gold based on market conditions or changes in your risk tolerance. Your life circumstances change, your plan might need to change too.
So it's about staying engaged and making sure your gold IRA is still aligned with your overall financial plan, not just assuming it's going to take care of itself.
Precisely. It's not a passive investment in the sense that you can completely ignore it. It requires some level of attention and active management, just like any other part of your retirement portfolio.
That makes sense. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something else the article mentioned, the tax implications of gold IRAs.
Yes, taxes are always an important consideration. As we mentioned earlier, gold IRAs enjoy the same tax advantages as traditional IRAs. Your money grows tax-deferred. However, there are some nuances to be aware of when it comes to withdrawals.
So it's not as simple as just cashing out your gold when you retire.
Well, it can be, but there are tax implications. With a traditional gold IRA, any withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income in the year you take them out.
So if you're in a high tax bracket during retirement, those withdrawals could significantly impact your overall income.
Exactly. That's why it's essential to factor in taxes when planning your gold IRA strategy. You might want to consider a Roth Gold IRA if you anticipate being in a higher tax bracket during retirement.
Right, because with a Roth IRA, you pay taxes up front on your contributions, but then your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free.
Precisely. So the choice between a traditional and Roth Gold IRA depends on your individual circumstances, your tax situation now and in the future, and your long-term financial goals. It can get complicated.
It sounds like it. This is definitely another area where consulting with a qualified financial advisor is so important. They can help you navigate these complexities and make sure your gold IRA strategy is optimized for your specific needs.
Couldn't agree more. Tax planning is a crucial aspect of retirement planning, and gold IRAs are no exception.
Okay, so we've covered due diligence, types of gold storage inflation, hedging diversification, the importance of ongoing management, and the tax implications. Is there anything else we should touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
Yes, I think it's worth revisiting the idea of gold as a safe haven asset. We've talked about how gold has historically held its value during times of economic uncertainty, but let's explore that concept a bit further.
Okay, so what are some of the factors that drive this safe haven status of gold?
Well, I think it starts with gold's intrinsic value. It's a tangible asset, a precious metal that has been prized for centuries. It has inherent worth, unlike, say, a stock certificate, which is just a piece of paper.
And unlike paper currencies, which can be printed at will, gold can't just be created out of thin air. There's a limited supply.
Exactly. That scarcity factor gives gold a certain level of resilience against inflationary pressures. When central banks print more money, it can devalue the currency, but gold tends to hold its own.
It's like a hedge against the whims of governments and central bankers.
Precisely. And then there's the psychological aspect. During times of crisis or uncertainty, war, political upheaval, economic meltdown, people often turn to gold as a safe haven asset. It's seen as a store of wealth that can weather those storms.
It's like that feeling of security you get from holding something tangible, something that stood the test of time. It's real. It's there. You can hold it.
Exactly. And that psychological factor can drive demand for gold, which in turn can support its price. It's a complex interplay of forces.
So it's a combination of tangible value, scarcity, and psychological perception that contributes to gold's safe haven status.
Absolutely. And that's why many investors see gold as a valuable addition to their retirement portfolios, especially during uncertain economic times.
It's like that sturdy anchor that keeps your ship steady in rough seas.
I like that analogy. We've covered a lot in this section. Due diligence in choosing a provider, the types of gold you can hold, the importance of secure storage, a deeper look at inflation hedging and diversification, the idea of ongoing management, those tax implications, and this fascinating concept of gold as a safe haven.
We have. It's clear that gold IRAs are more nuanced than they might appear at first glance.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that gold has been this, like, store of value for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up our deep dive into gold IRAs, I think the big question on everyone's mind is, does gold still have a place in our modern digital world?
It really is a fascinating question. We've got cryptocurrencies, digital assets, all these new technologies emerging, and gold, this ancient metal, is still in the mix.
Yeah.
It's like the, grand old sage of the financial world.
It really is.
Exactly. But will it stay relevant? The article we've been discussing doesn't go too deep on this, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth exploring.
So let's put on our futurist hats for a minute. What are some of the factors that might influence gold's relevance in the years to come?
Well, one key factor we've already discussed at length is inflation. If inflation continues to be a concern, and many experts believe it will be, gold could very well remain an attractive hedge,
Yeah.
right? Because of its historical track record of holding value when currencies lose purchasing power.
Mhm.
Precisely. Then there's the whole issue of geopolitical uncertainty. The world feels more volatile than ever. Political tensions, economic instability, even the potential for conflict. During such times, gold often becomes a safe haven asset.
Yeah, people flock to it because it feels stable and secure.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the growing demand for gold from emerging markets. As economies like China and India continue to develop, their citizens are accumulating wealth, and gold plays a huge role in those cultures.
Oh, for sure.
So we've got inflation concerns, geopolitical risks, and rising demand from emerging markets. These all seem to point towards gold remaining relevant.
They do. But on the flip side, there are potential challenges as well. One that's often discussed is the rise of digital assets like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Some people believe these could eventually replace gold as the go-to store of value.
It's almost like the digital world challenging the old guard.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great way to put it. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Another factor to consider is interest rates. When interest rates rise, holding gold can become less attractive because, unlike bonds or savings accounts, it doesn't generate any income.
Yeah, it just sits there.
Exactly. So there's a lot to consider, both potential tailwinds and headwinds for gold in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. So much to think about. But I think the key takeaway here is that gold has been around for centuries and it's weathered countless storms. It's likely to remain a relevant asset for many investors, especially those seeking diversification and a hedge against uncertainty. Whether or not it retains its, king of assets status, only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
That's true. And I think that brings us back to the core of what we've been discussing today, gold IRAs. We've gone deep on the mechanics, the benefits, the risks, the broader context of gold's place in a modern portfolio.
And I think what's become clear is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. The decision of whether or not to include a gold IRA in your retirement plan is a personal one. It depends on your individual circumstances, your risk tolerance, your financial goals, and your overall investment philosophy.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's about understanding the tool and then deciding if it's the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of doing your due diligence, talking to a qualified financial advisor, and really thinking through all the factors before making any decisions.
Absolutely. Great advice. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. It's given our listener the knowledge and the questions to ask as they navigate the world of gold IRAs.
And as you continue your research, I'll leave you with this thought-provoking question. If gold has held value for centuries in a world of rapidly changing technology and digital assets, what do you think its future role will be? Will its relevance persist or diminish? What do you think?
That's a great question to ponder. And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. We've given you the tools and information to dig deeper, ask the right questions, and make an informed decision that aligns with your unique financial goals. Happy investing.